Welcome back to my Accounting 2310 pencast, my second one on the topic of factoring accounts receivable. This time we're going to use an example with Recourse. My goal is to show you how to create a journal entry to factor your accounts receivable at this time when with recourse is one of the provisions. Recourse meaning that the person you factor the accounts receivable from can now come back against you for any bad debts that might come about as a result of the factoring. As you would expect, the factoring fee is going to go down. So let me put you on hold and bring forward some facts for this example. Our facts state that we would like to factor $60,000 of our accounts receivable to the bank. The agreement includes a recourse provision, which allows the bank to have recourse against us for certain amounts of money. The bank will remit 90% to us now, and they will retain 10%. They'll remit that remaining balance to us after they collect the receivables, which are estimated to have a fair value of $5,000. The factoring fee is 2%, and finally, the last thing we need to know is the recourse obligation. In our example, the recourse obligation is going to be $3,000. Let's put together a journal entry that deals with these facts. Let's note that, though, that the recourse obligation means that the bank can come back and look to us to reimburse them for up to $3,000 worth of bad debts, but it has been determined that this still meets the criteria for a sale, that the assets have in fact been transferred. So, let's start our example. Let's work with what we know. We're creating, remember, a journal entry to record this transaction. We know that we'll get some cash, and the cash equals 90% of the accounts receivable. 90% of $60,000 is $54,000. We also know that we are selling some accounts receivable. In fact, we're selling $60,000 worth of our accounts receivable. So two of our numbers have been already identified. The rest of the journal entry requires a little analysis, and I like to start with looking at the difference. We had accounts receivable in the amount of $60,000, and we were able to receive cash of $54,000 for those accounts receivable. So the difference that we're looking at is $6,000. It is estimated that the fair value of these accounts receivable are $5,000, so there's a difference of $1,000. Didn't leave myself much room there, did I? So there's $5,000 worth of fair value, and this $1,000 would be to cover sales returns and allowances and sales discounts. So the fair value of our transaction is $5,000. From that, we're going to subtract our factoring fee. Our factoring fee is 2% of $60,000. 2% of $60,000 is $1,200. So we're going to subtract that out. And we'll say that we are owed from the bank. Right now, we're due $3,800. So we have a receivable from our factoring agent, our bank, in the amount of $3,800. we also have a recourse obligation that needs to be booked. So we'll call that a recourse liability, where we might in fact owe the bank another $3,000. So we'll record that as well. So let's see where we are with our journal entry. You can see by looking that we've had a loss, and one way to come up with the loss is to add up the journal entry. We have $57,800 in debits and $63,000 in credits. If you subtract the debits from the credits, you can come up with the loss in that fashion. The loss is $5,200. But let's analyze that loss, much like we analyzed how much we were due on the accounts receivable. We had accounts receivable with a value of $60,000, and we received some cash for those. We received some cash now in the amount of $54,000, and we're going to receive some cash later in the form of a receivable from the factor. They're going to send us a check after they've collected in the amount of $3,800. We're also at risk of losing another $3,000. So let's see where we are first right here. We accepted $57,800 for $60,000 in accounts receivable. At this point, that shows we have a loss of $2,200, but we also have a recourse provision that says we will make the bank whole for another $3,000 should the need arise. So our total loss appears as though it will be $5,200, and that does in fact make this journal entry balance. So hopefully that will make sense to you. It's important when you factor with recourse that it's a bona fide sale, that the assets have been isolated, and that they have been in fact transferred, and they're out of our reach, and we no longer own them. But we said as part of our facts that this was the case in this example. Thanks for joining me on my discussion of factoring accounts receivable without recourse. I'll see you soon.